Look at a very handsome fella he is. GamecockTraditions.com. Preston knows this because you've shopped there now. Nick Harbor takes the opening kick to the house in Atlanta. Everybody gets their money back. I mean, it's the deal of a lifetime. So while you're out scrolling the internet, buying your Just a Chicken book for Christmas this year for your kids, and make sure you go to GamecockTraditions.com and purchase whatever it is for football season, maybe for the holidays. Go ahead and do it now, because if you buy it in November or December, you can't get your money back. But you can right now. I had a proud dad moment the other night, Mr. Thorne. Would you like to hear about it?
Let's go. I'm all for it.
It was the night before the first day of first grade for young Hannah and Riley, and we were reading them. Well, I was, because I animate it. Probably not as good as you and Langston, but I was reading them Just a Chicken, award-winning book. Everybody should have it for their children. And as you get towards the end, the line, you're not just a chicken, Cocky. You're a Gamecock. And as I went to say that, my daughters both screamed it at the same time, like they knew what was coming. You're a Gamecock. And I looked over and I looked at Carrie and she said, don't cry on me. Just get through the book and let's finish this thing. And I was like, yeah, but that's amazing. Like, we should have been videoing that. So
that's the moment. That's the one you wanted right there.
A moment, man. Thank you. Great books. Great books. He also, by the way, hosts the morning game or the early game on 107.5 and happened to play defensive tackle at South Carolina. What's up, man? You ready for football or what?
It's, the air is changing a little bit. The air is changing a little bit. You can just feel the air changing a little bit. We're getting into the single digits. This is when you start to feel excited. I'm excited right now. Classes just started at the university, so there's a little bit more buzz in the city, in Columbia here. So this is a fun time right now.
I just mentioned the golden tones of Mike Morgan. I would love one of you to read that book back to me and let me choose whose voice I like better, golden tones or Preston tones.
Thorne wins that every time. Come on.
Mike has the voice. Preston's got the animation, So Auburn is stealing the preseason show, gentlemen. Okay, first they got a bunch of coordinators, first down, second down, third down. Waterboy's going to call it on fourth down. And then Hugh Freeze says yesterday, Coach, you got Jackson Arnold. How are things going? Is there a chance we could play all three quarterbacks? Yes. We're very frustrated around here. Oh. So they might have maybe a first down quarterback and a second down quarterback and a third down quarterback. Things are getting interesting. And then today, Auburn says, we're claiming 4 more national championships. Our folks have been waiting 115 years for us to claim the one in 1910 and thereafter. So Auburn now has won 9 titles. They've just decided that, and that's what it's going to be. Maybe they'll make license plates like they did down in Orlando. What do y'all think about that? Crazy.
I think it's a response to Alabama's been doing it for 100 years. Preston knows what I'm talking about. Alabama's been claiming titles that are very questionable for a long, long time. So Auburn's like, well, if they can do it, we can do it.
Why not?
Yeah, strange enough, Auburn was all over my timeline yesterday. With the proclamation of going to the 3 quarterback system, which, I mean, sure, why not? Let's add more quarterbacks to the mix. So that there was that, and then there was announcing that they were retiring Cam's. I wasn't sure whether it was his jersey or his number. I got a little bit confused on that. So yeah, Auburn is making a splash preseason, which I'm not sure that's what you want to be doing, actually.
They'll make a bigger one, Preston, if they lose to Baylor in a few days. That would be a bad splash.
Which is a very, very real possibility.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's like a cannonball, Mike. Or like a belly flop. More like a belly flop is what that would be. A big man belly flop. What do we call it? Butt and gut belly flop.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what's so funny is I was really joking on the early game earlier this summer when Bill and I was talking about Hugh Freeze and his golf handicap, and I was seriously joking. I was like, this is a very stupid college football story. And then it started to pick up legs, and then they started to do more dumb things, and it's like, hold on, I really was just joking about that, but now I could definitely see if things go wrong, somebody will point back to that handicap and be like, told you Hugh Freeze wasn't doing his job.
Hey, Preston, I first off, it's good to meet virtually, I guess you could say. I know obviously about you and nothing but great things I've heard on a personal level. And I know Jamie has had you on before, but we have new listeners and viewers that check in every day. And I think they'd love to know, among other things, how you decided to get into broadcasting. When did you decide this is something you wanted to do?
Oh, this is a really interesting question. I don't know, sort of. I think I've just approached my career as with the Tarzan model, how you just swing from one vine to the next, and then the next one comes along.
Yep.
And so I taught for a long time. I taught for over a decade at Blackwood High School, which I credit a lot of my training in broadcasting. I didn't go to broadcast school per se, but I did talk in front of 9th and 10th graders for 11 years. I felt like if I could do that, if I could talk about ancient Greece to a bunch of uninterested 9th grade boys, then I could probably do college football. So I started doing this, and really shout out to Eric Kimry. I did a couple of appearances on his legendary podcast, The Fade. Yeah. And so I worked with Eric a couple of times, and then from there, Eric was working on 107.5, and when Eric left us in Columbia to go win more state championships down in Tennessee, he suggested to the folks at 107.5 that I might be somebody who could fill in during the midday. And from there, it's really grown and taken off, and I've really been enjoying the opportunity to just get up here and yap and talk about sports, because if you could have told 12 to 14-year-old Preston that all he had to do all day was just read and talk about sports, I would have been pretty happy.
That said, and it's been a very smooth landing spot for you. I've worked with a lot of great former players in this industry for a while, and one thing I always have picked up on, the best players very often don't make the best talk show hosts, analysts. The guys that were 5 stars and everything was just gifted to them. It's very often it's the guys that were diamonds in the rough, that had to grind, that have that work ethic, and they look at the profession and they say, I'm not going to just be good because I'm a former player. I got to work at this. This is actual work. And obviously you've taken that approach.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I respect everybody's profession, and what I do know is that, so again, similar to teaching, a lot of times people think teachers just show up and things happen, and there's a lot of prep that's involved in it. You have to plan, lesson plan, preparation, and all that. And I do, and I always respected that about the job that people do in broadcasting. It's not just simply, you can tell that it's not that easy when people get on the phone lines, and they've been waiting on the phone lines for 20 minutes to say something, and they can't put together a complete sentence. Right. And you're like, hey man, this was your spot. And so it is. I respect the work, and that's one of the things that I always have pride in myself in, going back to my playing career. And to that point, I think one of the things that I offer that's unique is that I sort of lived every single life as a college football player. I redshirted, I sat the bench, I played a significant role as a backup, I started. I did a lot of things as a college athlete. And so I have a lot of different perspective as far as how maybe certain players are seeing the field at certain times. Because like you said, sometimes when you're the 5-star guy, your experience was a little bit different than everybody else's. And, the coaches didn't talk to you the same way, or you didn't have to deal with some of maybe the emotional struggles or whatever the case was. And so I think that's one of my unique things, that I did live sort of the whole total experience as a college athlete.
It's a great lead in, because the guy that's leading the Gamecock football program did have to sit the bench and watch a guy named Spencer Rattler be the starting quarterback a couple of years ago. And now Lenor Sellers has stolen the show. Today it was announced he's one of 9 college football stars who will be representing Beats by Dre this season. It's also been announced this week that he's the face of Roback for the apparel gear for the University of South Carolina, not gear for the University of South Carolina. He's one of the faces for Roback in the Carolina gear. Is there anything ever, any player, a coach, can you think of any person that's ever been associated with the Gamecock athletics department that we could compare this to. I can think of one. She's still there. Her name is Dawn Staley. But besides that, do you have a comparison, and what is the residual effect of this?
Ooh, that's a good pick. That's a good pick. Obviously, Coach Staley is, you turn on the TV and she's on somewhere, and sometimes it seems like I would say the only two people I think have gained this much attention, I would say right now, and this wasn't at the university, but within the women's basketball world, I think Asia Wilson is kind of that person. But this was after her career at the university, and then maybe that Clowney coming era. That was a pretty big thing as far as college football is concerned. But obviously, we weren't in the NIL conversation, so we weren't having those same things. But you're right. It's really interesting when you listen to national broadcasts, and there's so much conversation nationally about our little local program right here. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's Mike and I were just kind of teeing up what is in front of Lenor Sellers this year and the platform that he will stand on. And if he performs well on it, who knows what happens for Gamecock football and for Lenor himself. But I mean, Preston, that first game is at 3:00 on a Sunday. Nobody else is playing on Sunday until 7:30 that night. You got what they used to call Catholics versus convicts, but as Lou once just said on with Savell, that wasn't true. Notre Dame didn't have a team full of Catholics.
That man he's still sharp. He's still sharp.
He still got it. And then after that, all these big time quarterbacks that are preseason All-Americans, Nussmeier, Klubnik, so on and so forth. He's going to get his shot against all those guys again, as he did last season. Of course, he almost beat Nussmeier, and Williams-Brice went down with the injury. Did beat Cade Klubnik up in the upstate, et cetera, et cetera. So I just don't know that I've ever seen, again, he has to go play well and they have to win games. We have to wait on the results. But I don't know that I've ever seen the red carpet laid out like this for a Gamecock football player.
No, I don't think you have. When we were starting to legitimately have Heisman type conversations, we're starting to legitimately talking, AP first team All-American, whether you're talking top 10 draft prospects, all of those things that are getting folks around the country excited about college football, and he's one of those particular people. So yeah, it's right there for the taking for everybody, and I think that's the thing that's making a lot of folks excited / nervous, anticipation, or whatever they have going into the season.
Okay, Mike and I have hit on this a little bit the last couple of days. You just brought up Coach Holtz, so let me try to tie these two together. You're both going to know exactly where I'm going with this. Preston, you obviously will. Mike, you obviously will. There was nobody better probably in the history of the sport than recreating the opponent than Lou Holtz. Y'all could be playing Kent State. Oh, God, you don't want to see these guys. They got a wide receiver with 70 catches. He wouldn't tell you it was over 4 years. But,
they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like we do.
Yeah, it's they're going to come in here. If we don't play well, they're going to beat us into oblivion. It's going to ruin it for 80,000. You know how he was. Shane Beamer and Mike is exactly right about the AP polls and the preseason poll in the SEC. Carolina coming in 5th. That stuff is there. Carolina is getting their due nationally with some folks. They are not getting their due nationally with others. A lot of big names that we know and love. Reese Davis would be one. I'm not picking on these guys. It's just their thoughts. There's nothing wrong with that. They have, we need to see something from South Carolina before we're going to put them in our top 25. Or we need to see a little bit more out of Lenor Sellers before we're going to take him over these 3 or 4 quarterbacks. Regardless of whether we think South Carolina is getting the right amount of attention, too much, not enough, it doesn't matter. Shane Beamer is a mastermind. I feel like this is playing into his hands, Preston. A mastermind at finding a couple of things and saying, see that? They don't think you're good enough. What have you learned about Shane, and what do you think these next few weeks are going to be like, sending that message into that locker room and making them absorb it before they kick off?
That's a very interesting question, because I think up to this point, Shane has always had the chip on his shoulder about maybe himself. Hey, listen, I wasn't a coordinator. People didn't think I could do it. So he's always had that. I'm the coach's son. They don't believe in me. I'm trying to be my own man. I think that's something that he believes. I'm not saying it's false. I think that's something that's really driven him to this point. And this was the first year I was wondering, okay, what's going to be his tactic this year? Because with all of the excitement and hype around the squad. But then, like you said, a couple of folks didn't pick him. And that's easy right there. You can take that and say, listen, everybody, some people believe it, but everybody doesn't. And that's something that's very important. And the second part is he can preach to a lot of these players like, hey, that team last year did that. Many of you were not on the field with us. You might have been watching. You might have been being recruited, but that was them. You have to go out there and preach that. And I think that's what he's really trying to hammer home to those players. Like, listen, man, that was cool what they did last year, but what are you going to do this year?
Is it easier to motivate with that type of information, or like the other side of it when everybody is telling you how great you are? Like, how do you compare and contrast what coaches have to do to funnel the message they want to funnel into the locker room?
Yeah, I think it's all about the personality of the team, which obviously he knows, and maybe we're not as privy to as far as how that team, because, going back to Coach Holtz was obviously a great coach. He was a master motivator, but he really only had he only had a fastball. He only had one speed. And I would love, if you talk to Michael Flynn or John or any of those guys, some of those later teams that were as talented, but ended up being average at best. It was sort of because Coach Holtz didn't have a different tool to motivate those teams. We were as good, but he was coaching us as if we were still the 0-11 team, and we weren't that anymore. But he didn't change his motivation tactics, and it kind of drew on us. And I say all that to say, I think Shane has recognized that the team and the program is in a different spot than they were initially, and he's smart enough to make the adjustments as far as what this team needs compared to what some of the other teams needed.
Wow, that's an incredible response. Just to dig in on that a little bit more, how did that affect you as a player? Was that something that was like, same old shtick? What was it?
Well, obviously, you kind of know some of the trick plays that are coming from Coach Holtz. You get those things, but it was more so. If I could make an analogy, I guess maybe when you're like a teenager and your parents are still treating you like you have little kids. Your girl, might be like, I'm a big girl now. Or I'm a big kid now. You don't need to do that to me. And it sort of felt like that as a player. It's like, you don't trust us to do the work or to handle the game plan or do all these things. We may have needed that at a certain time, but I think at another point we had understood what it took, and he never was able to loosen the reins from us, I think.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Preston, if I can turn it to this year a little bit, and a position quite a bit about, and that's the interior of the defensive line. And last year the depth and having Tonka and TJ, we know who stole the headlines, as is normally the case. It's always those damn defensive ends, Preston. They always get all the love and get all the sacks. But the interior of that defensive line was elite. How do you overcome those losses? How do you see that room looking like in 2025?
Yeah, I think this is one of my biggest question marks, and where you start to look at, hey, those guys were good last year. What are you going to do this year? I guess what I start with is the confidence in Travian Robinson coaching up the mentality that they'll have. There will be a talent discrepancy because, listen, man, you don't just have second and fourth round dudes playing next to each other anytime. That is a luxury that just may or may not happen again. Who knows? But I do think that they'll have the philosophy and the confidence that is instilled in them from the coach. Man, last year was one of the most fun I've had as a fan watching those dudes inside. You had Tommy, you had TJ, then you had Boogie, you had DeAndre, who was playing well when he was not injured. It was so much fun to watch those guys in the interior, and I think that's a big question mark. They have to live up to a standard that was set last year.
Mm-hmm. When did you know last year that group was special?
Ooh, I don't. When you watching defensive football, you sometimes get the idea like they're starting to like rally around the ball. There's almost like a frenzy starting to happen, and you see the big guys. You see the big guys making plays on the sidelines, outside the numbers. You see guys making plays on sweeps or on screens, and jumping over piles, and you just start to get a feeling earlier in the season. I mean, I think everybody. I remember I retweeted it, but it was the perfect quote. Ryan Brewer was saying, like, after the LSU game, hey, regardless of what the result was, this is a good team. And I think after that game, I was convinced, like, hey, we're going to be able to play with whoever. Obviously, that game didn't go the way we wanted it to, but I think after that game, I was pretty convinced that we were going to be good that year.
Rightfully so. I think that's one of the reasons why months ago I circled Nick Barrett. I just love this kid. You mentioned just at the top of the segment, Mike asked you a great question about your ascension into the broadcasting world, and you mentioned all the different ways that you can see it, hear it, understand it, and then relay that back to the audience because you went through all of it. Again, if somebody's just tuning in and they missed it, from red shirt to sitting the bench to part-time to full-time, difference maker on the interior of that side of the ball. You don't see a lot of that right now in college football. It's not like it once was at really any position. And Nick Barrett has chosen to stick around and be here and be a Gamecock. He didn't want to leave. He didn't go to coach at any point in time and say, this is what I want to do for more playing time. He said, I'm going to earn it here in Columbia, South Carolina. And he has done that. He'll probably start game one for the Gamecocks in the middle. And leaning on the experience that you mentioned just a moment ago and going through the four stages of D-line development, what do you expect from a guy like that who learned from the dudes you just mentioned that are now in the NFL?
Well, again, one, he has coaching that's in place. And I keep hammering that home because I do think I'm really high on Travian as a coach. Obviously, being a former player and an alum, that's awesome. That's cool. But also, he's doing an amazing job. The second part is being able to see guys who are successful at their jobs and at their positions and seeing what they did. There's no shame or fault in sitting behind a second and fourth rounder. People say like there's no problem with that, but he was able to see them perform and able to see what they could do. I will say for Nick, and as I experienced, it is a little bit different, being a backup for Langston Moore, where if Langston's tired, I get to go in there and play for him. He's already sort of worked the hell out of the center, and now I get the chance to clean up because he's already had to deal with the All-American all game. That's kind of fun. That's a little fun. It is a difference when you have to be the first guy to be out there. So there's a little bit of a difference as far as the role is concerned. And obviously Nick has been preparing for it, but there are some strategic differences that are when you're playing a significant role as a guy who's getting quality snaps as the backup as opposed to being the guy.
100%. As we'll talk to you next week as we get towards the game. We're getting closer and closer. But what is important, this final question for me here, what is important about game one on the defensive side of the football? Obviously, you mentioned all the voices are the same. It's still the same leader in Clayton White and what he has done with this. He's got his system in there, is what I'm getting at here. But what will be important in your eyes when they finally kick it off next Sunday in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the things you'll be paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be misassignment, misalignment. They always talk about misassignment, misalignment will get you beat quicker than anything else. So can the guys line up? Can they get all the calls in the secondary? Can they get all their calls up front and play solid defense? I think consensus is that we're probably more talented than the other team. And so what you see in the first week, a lot of dumb plays, blown coverages, guys blitzing in the same gap, all those types of things that'll get you beat early in the season. And so I think I'm just looking for them to play a brand of sound football and let their talent take over against a team who's good. They're fine, but I think they should be better than them if they don't allow any, dumb football plays to happen.
The team speed on the defensive side of the football for South Carolina is pretty good. And we'll see how quickly you can be fast, but do you play fast? We'll see. Next week.
You can be fast and two guys running in the same gap. Now we have an issue.